She escaped her toxic marriage and boarded a plane, unaware the man beside her was a millionaire CEO. What started as a desperate flight from 5 years of emotional prison would become something neither of them expected. A collision of two broken souls at 30,000 feet, where healing begins in the most unexpected places. By the time this plane lands, everything will change. Before we begin this emotional journey, drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another powerful love story. The boarding pass trembled in Lydia's hand as she shuffled down the narrow aisle of Flight 447. Seat 23A, window seat. Her fingers were still pale where her wedding ring used to rest, the indentation a ghost of promises that had turned to chains. She'd left it on the dresser 47 minutes ago, right next to the note that simply said, "I can't anymore." Her carry-on bag held everything that mattered now. A few changes of clothes, her grandmother's necklace, and the portfolio of interior design sketches he'd told her were worthless. 5 years of hearing she wasn't good enough, smart enough, pretty enough had worn grooves in her soul. But tonight, she was enough to save herself. She collapsed into her seat, pressing her forehead against the cool window. The Texas runway blurred through tears she refused to let fall. Not here. Not where strangers could see. She'd cried enough in bathroom stalls and empty parking lots. This flight to Seattle wasn't just about changing locations, it was about changing everything. "Excuse me." The voice was low, careful, like someone who understood the weight of disturbing another person's solitude. She glanced up to see a man in an impeccably tailored charcoal suit, though something about how he wore it seemed tired, like armor he was ready to remove. His eyes, grey like winter mornings, held a weariness that expensive clothing couldn't hide. She tucked her legs aside so he could reach seat 23B. He moved with practiced efficiency, stowing a leather briefcase overhead before settling beside her. The subtle scent of his cologne, cedar and something clean, made her realize she'd been holding her breath since boarding. "Thank you," he said quietly, adjusting his seatbelt. She nodded, turning back to the window. Please don't talk to me, she thought. Please just let me disappear into this flight and figure out how to breathe again. The plane pushed back from the gate. Safety demonstrations played while her mind raced through the checklist of her escape. Bank account switched. Done. Phone plan separated. Done. The apartment lease only had his name anyway. 5 years, and she'd never even been allowed on the lease. It's easier this way, he'd said. Everything was always easier his way. The engines roared to life. Her stomach dropped as the plane accelerated. This was it. No turning back. The wedding ring on the dresser would be found soon. Her phone, turned off and buried in her bag, probably had 20 missed calls already. But for the first time in years, she didn't have to answer, didn't have to explain, didn't have to make herself smaller. The plane lifted off, and with it, the weight of 5 years began to crack. A sob caught in her throat. She pressed her palm against her mouth, desperate to hold it in, but her shoulders shook anyway. First flight? She shook her head, not trusting her voice. Ah. A pause, then quietly. Sometimes the takeoff isn't about the flying. Something in his tone made her look at him. He wasn't staring, wasn't judging. His gaze was fixed on the seat back in front of him, but she sensed he understood. How could a stranger understand what her own family hadn't? "I'm sorry," she whispered, wiping her face with her sleeve. "I'm not usually—" "You don't need to apologize for being human." The simplicity of his words almost undid her completely. When was the last time someone had acknowledged her humanity? Not her failures, not her shortcomings, just her. The plane climbed higher, leaving Texas behind. She forced herself to breathe. In through the nose, out through the mouth, like the meditation app she'd hidden on her phone taught her, the one he'd mocked her for using. What do you need to meditate for? Your life is easy. 20 minutes into the flight, the seatbelt sign dinged off. The man beside her, she noticed his hands now, strong but gentle, as they accepted a glass of water from the flight attendant. No wedding ring, but a pale line suggested one had been there once. Recent, by the look of it. "Can I get you anything?" the flight attendant asked her. "Just water, please." "Actually," the man beside her said, "make that 2 bottles. Crying dehydrates you." He said it matter-of-factly, without pity, like he was stating the weather. The flight attendant smiled knowingly and returned with 2 bottles. He handed her one without ceremony. "Thank you," she managed. "David," he offered, not extending his hand, understanding somehow that she wasn't ready for that kind of contact. "Lydia." They fell into silence, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of quiet that exists between people who understand that sometimes words are too heavy to carry. An hour in, turbulence shook the plane. Lydia's knuckles went white on the armrest. Her breath shortened. The last time she'd felt this kind of shaking, it had been his fist against the wall, inches from her head, showing her what could happen if she kept pushing him. "Look at me." David's voice cut through the panic. She turned to find those grey eyes steady on hers. "Breathe with me. In 2, 3, 4. Hold 2, 3, 4. Out 2, 3, 4. She matched his rhythm, focusing on his calm presence. The turbulence continued, but her panic ebbed. "How did you know?" she asked when the plane smoothed out. "Because I've been there. Different circumstances, same feeling of the world shaking apart." She studied him then, really looked. Beneath the expensive suit and controlled demeanor was something fractured, carefully held together but fractured nonetheless. "You said, been there." Past tense. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Some days. Other days, it's very present tense." "What changed?" "I left," he said simply. "Sometimes that's the only way to stop drowning. You have to leave the ocean." Her throat tightened. "What if you don't know how to swim in anything else?" "Then you float until you remember, and if you're lucky you find other people floating too. Makes it less lonely." The flight attendant returned, this time addressing David by name. "Mr. Harrison, can I get you your usual?" "Just coffee, black. Thank you, Janet." Lydia noticed how he knew her name, how he treated her like a person, not just service staff. Her ex had always snapped his fingers at waiters, never bothered learning names. Small cruelties she'd taught herself to overlook until they piled up like stones in her chest. "You fly this route often?" she asked. "Too often. Board meetings in Seattle, home in Dallas. Though lately, I've been questioning the point of all that back and forth." "Why?" He was quiet for a long moment. "My wife used to say I was building an empire but forgetting to live in it. She was right. She usually was." His voice caught slightly on the past tense. "I'm sorry. Cancer. 18 months ago. She fought like hell, but some battles." He trailed off, then seemed to shake himself. "I'm sorry. You don't need my sob story on top of whatever you're carrying." "Actually," Lydia said, surprising herself, "it helps. Knowing I'm not the only one trying to figure out how to exist after everything changes." "What changed for you?" He asked it gently, making it clear she didn't have to answer. She thought about lying, giving some vague response. But something about 30,000 feet and this stranger's quiet understanding made truth easier. "I left my husband. Tonight. After 5 years of slowly disappearing, I finally left." The words tumbled out like water through a broken dam. "He never hit me. I want to be clear about that because people always ask. Like emotional abuse doesn't count unless there are bruises. But he made me small, criticized every dream, isolated me from friends, controlled the money. I used to be an interior designer, a good one. Now I can't even pick out curtains without second-guessing myself." David listened without interrupting, without the platitudes she expected. When she finished, he said, "The bruises no one can see often hurt the worst. He'll be looking for me by now, calling, texting, probably driving to all the places he thinks I'd go." "But you're here instead." "I'm here instead," she repeated, tasting freedom in the words. "Have you ever taken a leap of faith that terrified you but knew it was necessary?" Share your story in the comments. Sometimes we need to know we're not alone in our courage. The plane continued its journey through the night sky. They talked in fits and starts, sharing pieces of themselves like travelers trading provisions. She learned he'd built his company from nothing, driven by the need to provide for his wife during her treatment. He learned she'd once designed a restaurant that won awards, before her husband convinced her to give up her hobby. "It wasn't a hobby," David said firmly. "Creating beauty in spaces where people live their lives, that's important work." He said it was playing with fabric samples and paint chips. He was wrong. The simple conviction in his voice made her eyes water again. When was the last time someone had defended her dreams? "Tell me about the restaurant," he encouraged. So she did. For the first time in years, she talked about her work with passion instead of apology, about how she'd transformed a failing bistro into a warm, inviting space that made people want to linger, how she'd sourced reclaimed wood from old Texas barns, convinced local artists to display their work, created an atmosphere that felt like coming home. "The owner said reservations went up 300% after the redesign," she said, then caught herself. "Sorry, I'm rambling." "No," David said firmly. "You're remembering who you are." The plane began its descent into Seattle. Reality crept back in. Soon they'd land, collect their bags, and disappear into their separate lives. This strange bubble of connection would burst. "I don't even have a plan," Lydia admitted. "I just knew I had to leave." "Sometimes the plan is just the next breath, the next step. That's enough." The wheels touched down. Around them, passengers immediately reached for phones, overhead bins, the rush to exit. But Lydia and David sat still, neither ready to break whatever spell had been woven between them. "This is probably forward," David said, "but I have a car picking me up. If you need a ride somewhere." She hesitated. 5 years of being told she was too trusting, too naive, too everything wrong. "Or not," he said quickly. "I understand. Just be safe, Lydia. You've come too far tonight to be anything but safe." They deplaned in silence, walking through the jet bridge into the bright terminal. Lydia turned toward baggage claim, then stopped. David was a few steps behind, giving her space but somehow still present. "I don't even know where I'm going," she admitted. "There's a good hotel near the airport, clean, safe, reasonable rates. I can write down the name." "Mr. Harrison," a uniformed driver appeared, professional and deferential. "Your car is ready, sir." Lydia's eyes widened slightly. The expensive suit suddenly made more sense. The first-name basis with the flight crew, the quiet authority he carried. This wasn't just a businessman. This was someone important. "Thank you, James. I'll be a moment." But Lydia was already backing away. "I should go. Thank you for everything." "Lydia, wait." She paused. "This is going to sound crazy," he said, running a hand through his hair in the first nervous gesture she'd seen from him. "But would you have dinner with me? Not tonight. I know you need to settle in, figure things out. But maybe tomorrow. I know a quiet place, good food, no pressure, just... I'd like to continue our conversation." She should say no. Every self-help book about leaving toxic relationships warned against jumping into anything new. But this didn't feel like jumping. It felt like floating, like he'd said. Finding another person in the same ocean. "I don't even have appropriate clothes for dinner," she said weakly. "Come as you are. You're enough as you are." The words hit her like a physical force. "You're enough as you are." When had anyone last said that to her? "Okay," she whispered. He smiled then, the first real smile she'd seen from him, and it transformed his face from handsome to breathtaking. "Can I give you my number?" She handed him her phone with shaking hands. He entered his information, then did something unexpected. He called himself from her phone. "Now you have mine, and I have yours. No pressure to use it. But if you need anything, directions, restaurant recommendations, or just someone to remind you that you're brave, call." The driver hovered professionally. David needed to go. "The hotel?" she asked. "The Fairmont. Tell them." He paused, seemed to reconsider. "Just tell them you need a room. You'll be fine." He walked toward his waiting car, then turned back. "Lydia, for what it's worth, I think your ex was a fool. Anyone who can't see the light in you was living in darkness. Then he was gone, leaving her standing in the middle of the airport with a phone number and the first spark of hope she'd felt in years. The hotel was indeed clean, safe, and more upscale than she'd expected. The desk clerk was kind, didn't ask questions about her lack of luggage or the way her hands shook signing the registration. The room was a haven, crisp white sheets, a view of the city lights, a bathtub that called to her aching soul. She sat on the bed and finally turned on her phone. 43 missed calls, 67 texts. The last one made her blood run cold. "I know where you are." But he didn't. He couldn't. She was 2,000 miles away, in a city he'd never let her visit, in a hotel he'd never heard of, becoming someone he'd never allow her to be. She deleted them all without reading, then blocked his number. The relief was overwhelming. Her phone buzzed. A new text from an unknown number. "This is David. Just wanted to make sure you got settled safely. No need to respond, I just remember the first night after leaving is the hardest. You're braver than you know." She stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Thank you for everything today." His response was immediate. "Thank you for reminding me that connection is still possible. Sleep well, Lydia. Tomorrow is a new day." She took a long bath, ordered room service for the first time in her life, and fell asleep in the middle of the king-sized bed, sprawled out, taking up space, existing without apology. The next morning brought sun streaming through the windows and a strange sensation, hope. She had no plan, no home, no idea what came next, but she had something she hadn't had in years, possibility. Her phone rang. David. "Good morning," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "I hope I'm not calling too early." "No, I've been up, watching the city wake up." "How are you feeling?" She considered lying, giving the expected fine, but he deserved truth. Terrified. Free. Everything at once. "That sounds about right. Listen, I know we said dinner, but I had a thought. There's a design showroom in Pike Place Market. A friend of mine owns it. I wondered if you might like to go. No pressure, just..." "You lit up talking about your work yesterday. Maybe it's time to feed that part of yourself again." "I couldn't..." "Why not?" The simple question stopped her. Why not? The automatic no had been programmed into her for so long she'd forgotten to question it. "Okay," she said, surprising herself again. "I'll pick you up at 10. We can grab coffee first." "David, why are you doing this?" He was quiet for a moment. "Because 18 months ago, someone showed me kindness when I was drowning. They didn't try to save me. They just sat with me until I remembered how to swim. I'd like to do the same for someone else. For you, if you'll let me. If this story is touching your heart, please hit that like button. It really helps me know what resonates with you all." At exactly 10, he was waiting in the lobby. Not in a suit this time, but in dark jeans and a soft grey sweater that made his eyes even more striking. He looked younger, less armored. "You came?" he said, seeming genuinely pleased. "I almost didn't. Changed my mind 6 times. "What made you come?" I realized the voice telling me not to wasn't mine. It was his, and I'm done listening to that voice. His smile was proud, as if she'd accomplished something monumental. Maybe she had. The coffee shop was small, local, nothing like the chains her ex had insisted on. Consistency is important, he'd always said, but now she realized he'd meant control. David let her choose, waited patiently while she studied the menu like it was a test she could fail. "The lavender latte is their specialty," he offered gently. "But get whatever sounds good to you." Whatever sounds good to you. Such a simple phrase, but it made her eyes sting. She ordered the lavender latte and a cranberry scone, then watched in wonder as David chatted with the barista about her new puppy, asked about her classes. He saw people, really saw them. "You're different than I expected," she said as they found a corner table. "Different how?" "On the plane, in that suit, the driver calling you Mr. Harrison. I thought you'd be..." "Arrogant? Cold? Trust me, I've been both. My wife used to say success was making me hard. She was right about that too." "What changed?" She died, he said simply. And I realized I'd spent 20 years building walls to protect myself from feeling, only to discover that not feeling is its own kind of death. They sat with that truth between them, comfortable in its weight. "The showroom," Lydia said eventually. "Your friend won't mind." "Elena? She'll be thrilled. She's always looking for fresh perspectives. Plus," he grinned, "she owes me." I introduced her to her husband. The Pike Place market was sensory overload after years of carefully controlled environments. Colors, sounds, smells, life in all its messy glory. David navigated the crowds with easy confidence, but never rushed her, never made her feel like she was taking too long at the flower stalls or the art vendors. "For you're smiling," he observed. "Am I? I'd forgotten what this felt like, being in the world instead of watching it through windows." The design showroom was a converted warehouse space, all exposed brick and soaring ceilings. Eleanor turned out to be a whirlwind of energy in her 60s, with silver hair and paint-stained fingers. "David, and you must be the designer he called about. Come in, come in." "He called?" Lydia looked at David, who had the grace to look sheepish. "I may have mentioned I was bringing a talented designer by. Elena's been looking for someone to collaborate with on a hotel project." "David, I haven't worked in—" "Talent doesn't expire," Elena interrupted. "It just waits. Now, tell me what you think of this space. First instincts, no overthinking." For the next 2 hours, Lydia lost herself in textures and possibilities. Elena showed her fabric samples, architectural drawings, mood boards. Slowly, tentatively, Lydia began offering opinions, then suggestions, then full ideas, her hands moving as she talked, sketching quick concepts on scrap paper. David watched from a respectful distance, occasionally fetching coffee or asking questions that drew out more of her vision. When she caught him smiling at her animated explanation of light theory, she felt something shift in her chest. Not attraction, not yet, but recognition. He saw her, the real her that had been buried under years of criticism. "You're hired," Elena announced suddenly. "What? We weren't—" "I know talent when I see it. The hotel project starts in 3 weeks. That gives you time to get settled, maybe sketch some preliminary ideas. David can give you my number." "But I don't even live here. I don't have—" "Details," Elena waved dismissively. "We'll figure out details. The question is, do you want it?" Did she want it? A real job using her real skills in a city where no one knew her as someone's wife? "Yes," she breathed. "Yes, I want it." Eleanor clapped her hands. "Wonderful. David, take this girl to lunch. She looks like she's about to faint." Outside, Lydia did feel faint, but not from hunger. Did that just happen? It did. How do you feel? Like I'm in someone else's life. A better life. "No," David said firmly. "Your life. The one you're choosing." They had lunch at a tiny Vietnamese restaurant David knew, where the owner greeted him by name and the PHO was perfect. Lydia found herself talking, really talking, about her dreams, her fears, her plans that were still just seedlings. "I need to find an apartment and furniture and figure out how to get my things from Texas, though honestly, I don't want most of them. They don't feel like mine anymore." "Fresh start, fresh space," David agreed. "I know a good realtor if you'd like." "You know everyone." "Not everyone. But when you've lived in a city long enough, you collect people. Good people, mostly. I'd like to introduce you to them when you're ready." "Why?" The question escaped before she could stop it. "Why are you being so kind to me?" He set down his chopsticks, considering. "Can I tell you something about my wife?" She nodded. "Sarah was light, pure light. When she got sick, I watched that light dim and I raged against it. Threw money at treatments, flew in specialists, tried to buy her more time. But near the end, she took my hand and said, 'David, I need you to promise me something. When I'm gone, don't close yourself off. Find the light in other people. Help it grow. That's how you'll keep me alive.'" His voice roughened. "I've been failing at that promise. Buried myself in work, avoided connections. Then yesterday on that plane I saw someone whose light was flickering but not out. And I thought, Maybe this is what she meant. Lydia reached across the table, touched his hand briefly. She sounds wonderful. She was. She would have liked you. She had a thing about authentic people, said they were rare as unicorns. He smiled sadly. You're authentic, Lydia, even after someone tried to convince you otherwise. They spent the afternoon walking the waterfront. David pointed out landmarks, good running paths, the best place to watch sunsets. Lydia felt like she was learning a new language, the language of a life she might actually want to live. As the sun began to sink, David's phone rang. He frowned at the screen. I'm sorry, I need to take this work. She wandered a few feet away, giving him privacy, but could hear the tension in his voice. When he hung up, his expression was tight. Everything okay? Board meeting moved up. I have to fly back to Dallas tonight. He looked genuinely upset. I'm sorry. I know we said dinner. It's fine, she said quickly, though disappointment sat heavy in her chest. It's not fine. He stopped, ran his hand through his hair again. I don't want to leave you. Not when you're just starting to... Another stop. That sounded presumptuous. You don't need me. You're doing amazingly on your own. David. She waited until he looked at her. You help me remember who I am. That's not nothing. Will you still be here when I get back? 3 days, maximum. Where else would I go? Promise me something? He stepped closer, and she could see the vulnerability in his eyes. Don't disappear. Don't talk yourself out of the job or the apartment or any of it. Don't let the voice that isn't yours win. I promise. He smiled, relief evident. Can I call you while I'm gone? I'd like that. The drive back to her hotel was quiet, both of them aware that something was shifting, deepening. At the entrance, he turned to her. Lydia, I need to say something, and it might be too soon, but I'm learning that waiting for the perfect moment means missing the real ones. He took a breath. I like who I am when I'm with you. I like who you're becoming. I'd very much like to see where this goes, but only if you're ready. No pressure, no expectations, just possibility. Her heart hammered against her ribs. 5 years of being told she was too much, not enough, never right, and here was this man saying he liked who she was becoming. I'm scared, she admitted. Good. All the best things start with a little fear. What if I'm not ready? What if I need time to just be me? Then you take time. I'm not going anywhere, Lydia. Well, except Dallas for 3 days, but metaphorically speaking. She laughed, surprising herself. When had she last laughed? Call me, she said, while you're gone. Tell me about your day. Let me tell you about mine. Every evening, if you'll answer. I'll answer. He kissed her cheek, soft as a whisper, then was gone. Have you ever met someone at exactly the right moment in your life? When you both needed each other? I'd love to hear your story in the comments. The 3 days passed in a blur of activity. True to his word, David called every evening, their conversations stretching for hours. She told him about apartment hunting, finding a studio with exposed brick and good light, about her first sketches for Elena's project, nervous but excited, about learning the bus routes and finding a yoga studio. He told her about board meetings that felt pointless, about visiting Sarah's grave, about how he'd started therapy to deal with his grief. My therapist says I have a savior complex, he admitted on the second night. Do you? Maybe, probably. But she also said sometimes two people can save each other just by being present. I don't need saving, Lydia said carefully. I already saved myself. I know. That's what I like about you. You're not looking for a hero. You are one. On the third night he called from the airport. I'm coming home, he said, and she heard the smile in his voice. Funny how Seattle feels more like home than the place I've lived for 20 years. What time do you land? 10:30. Don't feel like you need to. I'll be there. Lydia, I want to be there. Let me do something for you for a change. She dressed carefully, jeans and a soft sweater Eleanor had insisted she buy. Designers need to look the part, darling. Standing at arrivals, she felt nervous as a teenager. What if the magic of those first days had been altitude-induced? What if he'd realized she was too much work, too damaged, too... Then she saw him, scanning the crowd, his face lighting up when he spotted her. He moved through the crowd with purpose, and then he was there, dropping his bag to pull her into a hug that felt like coming home. "You're here," he breathed into her hair. "I promised I wouldn't disappear." Best promise anyone's ever kept. They stood there holding each other while travelers streamed around them, and Lydia felt something settle in her chest. Not love, not yet, but the foundation for it. Trust, safety, the radical idea that she was worth showing up for. "Hungry?" he asked, pulling back to look at her. "Starving. I know a 24-hour diner that makes the best pie in Seattle." "Pie for dinner?" Life's too short for conventional meal rules. In the diner, over chocolate cream and coffee, she showed him her sketches for Elena's project. His eyes lit up as she explained her vision, his questions thoughtful and engaged. "These are brilliant, Lydia. You know that, right?" "I'm starting to believe it." "Good. Belief is the first step. What's the second?" "Action, which you're already taking. The third is harder, accepting that you deserve the good things that come from it." "Still working on that one." "Me too," he admitted. "Sarah used to say I was better at giving than receiving. Maybe we can practice together." "I'd like that." His hand found hers across the table. "I have a confession. I extended my stay in Seattle. Told the board I'm working remotely for the next month." "Why?" "Because something is happening here. With you, with me, with us. And I don't want to miss it by being 2,000 miles away." "David, no pressure. I have my own place, my own life. I just want to be in the same city while we figure this out. Is that okay?" She squeezed his hand. More than okay. The weeks that followed felt like learning to breathe underwater. Impossible, until suddenly it wasn't. Lydia threw herself into the hotel project, her confidence growing with each approved design. David was there, but not oppressively so. He had his own work, his own therapy appointments, his own journey of healing. They met for coffee most mornings, had dinner twice a week, spent Saturdays exploring the city, finding bookshops and art galleries and tiny restaurants where they could talk for hours. "I've been thinking," Lydia said one evening, 2 months after that first flight. They were cooking dinner in her new apartment. She'd finally found the perfect place, with a view of the water and room for a small studio space. "Dangerous," David teased, chopping vegetables with surprising skill. "I want to go back to Texas." He stilled. "Oh?" "To get my things, my portfolio, some personal items. Close that chapter properly." She took a breath. "I was wondering if you'd come with me." "Of course, when?" "You don't want to think about it?" "Nothing to think about. You need support. I'm there." "It might be ugly. He might... I don't know what he might do." David set down the knife, turned to face her fully. "Lydia, I've watched you rebuild yourself from scratch, design beautiful spaces, make Elena cry with your talent. You're the strongest person I know, but strong doesn't mean alone. Let me stand beside you for this." "Beside, not in front of. Always beside. You fight your own battles. I'm just there to remind you how capable you are." The trip to Texas was everything she'd feared and more. Her ex had changed the locks, but legally, she still had rights to her belongings. David hired a lawyer, arranged for movers, handled logistics while she focused on staying strong. Seeing her old home was like visiting a crime scene. Everything looked the same, but felt foreign. Had the walls always been this grey? Had the silence always been this heavy? 5 years, she whispered, standing in what had been her office, now converted to his gym. Her drafting table was gone, her sketches probably thrown away. "Hey," David said softly. "Look at me." She did. 5 years of surviving, and now a lifetime of living. That's the trade-off. They salvaged what they could. Photos of her grandmother, her degree, a few pieces of furniture that predated the marriage. Her ex showed up as they were loading the truck full of rage and threats that dissolved the moment he saw David's calm presence and the lawyer's card. "You'll be back," he spat at her. "You're nothing without me." "You're right," Lydia said, surprising everyone. "I'm nothing like the woman who lived here. Thank you for showing me who I never want to be again." She walked away, David's hand steady on her back, and didn't look back. On the flight home, and Seattle was home now, she cried. Not from sadness, but from relief. It was over, really, truly over. "You were amazing," David said, holding her hand as Texas disappeared below them. "I was terrified." Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's acting despite it. "Sarah?" "No, that one's all me," though she would have agreed. 6 months after that first flight, they were back in Pike Place Market. The hotel project was complete, a stunning success that had led to 3 more commissions. Lydia had her own studio now, her name on the door, clients who sought her out for her vision. David had changed too. Still successful, still driven, but softer around the edges. He'd cut his Dallas trips to once a month, was in therapy, had started a foundation in Sarah's name that helped women leaving abusive relationships start over. "I have something to tell you," he said over lunch at their Vietnamese place. "Good or bad?" "Good, I think. I hope." He seemed nervous, fiddling with his chopsticks. "I'm selling the Dallas company." "What?" "David, that's your life's work." "No," he corrected. "It was my life's distraction. I built it for Sarah, then hidden it after she died, but I don't want to hide anymore." "What will you do?" "Start something new here, smaller, more meaningful. Maybe partner with Elena, invest in local artists and designers." He looked at her meaningfully. "Support people who are building beautiful things." "That sounds wonderful." "There's more." He reached across the table, took her hand. "Lydia, I need to say something, and I need you to know there's no pressure, no timeline, no expectations." Her heart raced, but it was anticipation now, not fear. "I love you," he said simply. "Not because you need me. You don't. Not because I need to save you. You saved yourself. I love you because you make me want to be better, because you see beauty where others see broken things, because you're brave and talented and kind, even after someone tried to steal those things from you." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "David, you don't have to say it back. I just needed you to know. You deserve to be loved, Lydia. Fully, completely, without conditions." "I love you too," she whispered. "It terrifies me, but I do. You make me feel safe enough to be myself. All of myself, not just the parts someone else approves of." He brought her hand to his lips, kissed it gently. "Then let's be ourselves together. No rush, no pressure. Just us." I'd like that. If you're watching this and believe in second chances at love, please hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Sometimes love finds us when we're brave enough to find ourselves first. 1 year later, they stood in her studio, now expanded to include 2 junior designers. The walls were covered with awards, magazine features, photos of completed projects. But the photo that mattered most was small, tucked on her desk. Her and David at Pike Place, laughing at something Elena had said, looking at each other like they'd discovered the secret to happiness. Maybe they had. "I have a proposal," David said, using his business voice that always made her smile. "Another hotel?" "Bigger. There's a house in Queen Anne. Needs complete renovation. The bones are good, but it's been neglected. Someone who didn't see its potential." He pulled out his phone, showed her photos. "I thought maybe we could tackle it together. You design, I manage the construction. Make it ours." "Ours?" "If you want. No pressure, but I'm tired of maintaining 2 places when all I want is to wake up next to you every morning." She studied the photos. The house was a mess, but she could see it. The potential, the beauty waiting underneath the neglect. Like her, like him, like them. "I have conditions," she said. "Name them." "My studio stays mine. I need a space that's just for me." "Of course. We both keep going to therapy, together and separately." "Agreed. And we take it slow, room by room, no rushing to fill all the spaces at once." He smiled. "You're talking about more than the house. I'm talking about everything. Then yes to all of it. They bought the house, spent weekends pulling up old carpet and discovering hardwood underneath. Every design choice was a conversation, a negotiation, a lesson in building something together. David learned she needed silence in the mornings until her coffee kicked in. She learned he still talked to Sarah sometimes, and that was okay. "I told her about you," he admitted one evening, paint in his hair from working on the bedroom walls. "Is that weird?" "What did you tell her?" "That I found someone who makes me want to live again. Really live, not just exist. That you would have been friends. That loving you doesn't diminish what we had, it honors it. She taught me how to love well. I want to use that knowledge with you." Lydia set down her paintbrush, crossed to him. "She loved you well too. I can see it in how you treat people, how you see the world. I'm grateful to her for that." They held each other in the half-finished room, surrounded by drop cloths and possibility. 2 years after that first flight, they married in the backyard of their now beautiful home. Small ceremony. Elena, a few close friends, the flight attendant Janet who'd served them that first day and had become a friend. Lydia wore a simple dress she'd chosen herself, without asking anyone's permission or approval. David cried when he saw her, and she cried when he said his vows. "You gave me back my wings," she said in hers. "Not to fly away, but to soar beside you." The reception was in their living room, the one she'd designed with warm colors and soft textures, with built-in bookshelves and window seats perfect for rainy Seattle afternoons. Eleanor made a toast about fate and timing and the magic of two broken people creating something whole. "To be clear," Lydia said in her own toast, "we didn't fix each other. We're not each other's missing pieces. We're two complete people who chose to build something together. That's the love story I want to tell." 5 years after that first flight, Lydia stood in her expanded studio, now occupying an entire floor of a Pioneer Square building. Her team of 12 designers worked on projects across the Pacific Northwest. The walls held not just awards, but letters from clients whose spaces she'd transformed, whose lives had been made more beautiful by her vision. David appeared in the doorway with coffee, as he did most afternoons when his own office was just upstairs. His company invested in local artists, craftspeople, small businesses with big dreams. They'd found their rhythm, together but independent, supportive but not codependent. "Board meeting ran late?" she asked, accepting the coffee gratefully. "No board anymore. I'm retired, remember? Just a volunteer thing with the foundation." He studied her latest sketches. "This is gorgeous. The client will love it." "Think so?" "I know so. You have a gift for seeing what spaces want to become. Like people," she said, leaning into him, "sometimes we just need someone to see our potential." Speaking of potential, he pulled out his phone, showed her a listing. "There's a property in Bellingham, former boutique hotel, been empty for years. Elena thinks we should buy it, turn it into a retreat center for women starting over. Design therapy, art workshops, that kind of thing." Lydia's eyes lit up. "Really?" "The foundation would fund it. You'd design it. We'd create something beautiful from something broken." "Our specialty," she laughed. "What do you think?" "I think Sarah would love it." "I think so too." They stood together in the studio she'd built, planning another transformation, another chance to create beauty from pain. Outside, Seattle hummed with life. Inside, two people who'd found each other at exactly the right moment continued writing their story. "Hey," Lydia said suddenly, "do you ever think about that flight? Every day. What if I'd chosen a different seat? What if you'd taken an earlier flight?" "Then we'd have found each other another way," David said with certainty. "Some things are meant to be, Lydia. We just have to be brave enough to let them happen." She kissed him then, tasting coffee and certainty and the sweet reality of a life rebuilt on her own terms, shared with someone who understood that love wasn't about saving or being saved. It was about choosing to grow alongside someone else, roots intertwining, but branches free to reach for their own sky. That night, as they made dinner together in their kitchen, the one with subway tiles she'd chosen and cabinets he'd helped install, Lydia thought about the woman she'd been on that plane. scared, broken, running from instead of toward. "What are you thinking about?" David asked, noticing her distant expression. "That woman on the plane. Sometimes I want to go back and tell her it's going to be okay. More than okay." "What would you tell her?" Lydia considered. "That leaving was just the first step. That she's stronger than she knows, that love isn't supposed to make you smaller, that one day she'll design beautiful spaces and live in one with a man who sees her light even when she can't." She paused. "That the best love stories aren't about being rescued. They're about two people choosing to rescue themselves and then choosing each other." "That's beautiful." "It's true." They ate dinner by candlelight, not because it was a special occasion, but because Tuesday deserved beauty too. Later, curled together on the couch she'd reupholstered herself, David read while Lydia sketched. Comfortable silence, the kind that comes from security, from knowing you're exactly where you belong. Her phone buzzed. A text from a number she didn't recognize. "Hi, I got your contact from the foundation. I just left my husband and I'm on a plane to Seattle. I heard you might understand. Could we maybe talk?" Lydia showed David the message. He squeezed her hand. "Full circle," he murmured. "What do I say?" "The truth that it's scary but survivable, that she's braver than she knows, that there's life after leaving." Lydia typed back, "I understand completely. You're safe now. Let's meet for coffee when you land. You're going to be okay, more than okay." She hit send, remembering her own first night in Seattle, how lost she'd felt, how impossible happiness had seemed. Now here she was, paying forward the kindness David had shown her, creating ripples of healing that would spread far beyond their own story. "I love you," she said suddenly, urgently, needing him to know. "I love you too. Always. Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself. Thank you for reminding me how to see beauty again." They sat in their designed with love home, successful in their careers but more successful in their choice to heal, to grow, to love without limits or conditions. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new chances to transform broken things into beauty. But tonight, they were simply Lydia and David, two people who'd found each other in the sky and chosen to build their heaven on earth, one conscious choice at a time. The woman on the plane had escaped her toxic marriage, unaware that the man beside her would become not her savior, but her partner, not her rescue, but her equal, not her ending, but her beginning. And that made all the difference. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to hear more stories about love, second chances, and the courage to begin again. Remember, sometimes the best love stories start when we're brave enough to love ourselves first. Share this with someone who needs to hear that leaving can be the first step toward love, not away from it.